among the 94% of trial participants who were HIV negative.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says during a statement in Parliament that controls will be enforced at airports to prevent people from traveling for leisure, and that nationals and residents returning from high-risk countries will have to quarantine in hotels for 10 days. We have Janelle Kasuga of our EBC UK Bureau with that report. Janelle?
Thank you, CJ. On Wednesday, new rules announced that British citizens and permanent residents flying back from 22 high-risk countries will have to quarantine in hotels. This came in light of the discovery of new coronavirus variants being found in Brazil and South Africa. Let's listen in.
Under the stay-at-home regulations, it is illegal to leave home to travel abroad for leisure purposes. And we will enforce this at ports and airports by asking people why they are leaving and instruct our in hospital with COVID, almost double the peak of the first wave. But the overall picture should be clearer by mid-February. By then, we will know much more about the effect of vaccines in preventing hospitalizations and deaths.
According to the Times and the BBC, beefed-up rules will require the travellers to stay in hotels near airports for a period of 10 days. The 10-day quarantine will cost returning Britons £1,500, with meals served at the bedroom door and security guards supervising stays. Interior Minister Priti Patel gave a statement in Parliament on Wednesday concerning the borders policy after a meeting with the government's COVID-19 Operations Committee. According to Patel, plans were still being operationalized, with no date mentioned for their introduction, and further details would be announced next week. These stringent quarantine rules emulate past actions taken by countries such as Australia and New Zealand, which have emerged with dramatically lower death tolls. The Times reported ministers were divided between those supporting the limited quarantine regime and those favouring a blanket policy requiring arrivals from all destinations to self-isolate in hotels. Britain has been the hardest hit in Europe from the pandemic, becoming only the 5th country in the world to surpass 100,000 deaths after recording another 1,631 fatalities on Tuesday. Prime Minister Boris Johnson imposed a third national lockdown in early January, shutting schools and non-essential shops, but critics said the UK's borders remain a soft spot. With a more contagious variant of the coronavirus sweeping the country since December, some health experts have warned it could register as many as 50,000 further deaths in the coming months. CJ?
Well, thank you so much, Janelle, for your report. Just a quick question. Are there any updates concerning the end of the third lockdown there?
Well, CJ, the government already have a lockdown exit plan in place, with shops, schools, and travel being opened and allowed at different times. Currently, schools and universities are again undergoing online or distance learning. On Wednesday, the Prime Minister has also announced that schools would be the first to open again. However, this won't be until after March 8, since the government plans to vaccinate the most vulnerable and at-risk population by mid-February.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your report, Janelle. Please do stay safe out there.
Thank you, CJ. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I'm Janelle Kasuga. We live in interesting times.
To Japan now, where the Prime Minister said he's determined to hold the Olympics this summer despite surging coronavirus infections worldwide. Here's Dennis Liu joining us live from Tokyo. Hello, Dennis.
Hello, Alma. Good evening.
Good evening.
Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga vowed to hold the Olympics as a symbol of unity and hope, despite growing doubts over the virus-postponed event's fate. Let's listen in.
that Japan is to take the key to this. And I want to build together with you who are participating today the future beyond that is full of hopes. This summer, Japan is going to host Tokyo Olympic and Paralympic Games. We are determined to deliver the games that would bring hopes and courage to the whole world as a testimony of the mankind prevailing over COVID-19 and as a symbol of the unity of the world. I appeal to you for your continued support and cooperation. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
His tone echoed that of Tokyo Olympics organizers and the International Olympic Committee, both of whom insisted this week that the Games will go ahead safely. But with many countries still paralyzed by COVID-19 and large parts of Japan, including Tokyo, under a state of emergency, concern is growing over pushing ahead with the huge international event, due to start on July 23rd, Tokyo's first Olympic test event of 2021. An artistic swimming competition is scheduled for March, was postponed on Thursday for 2 months because of travel restrictions. In December, Tokyo 2020 chiefs unveiled a 53-page antivirus rulebook that they say will allow the Games to be held safely even without a vaccine. But public support in Japan for holding the Games this year is low. A poll conducted last weekend by the Asahi Shimbun newspaper showed only 11% of the 1,647 respondents said the Olympics should go ahead this summer. In the survey, 51% supported postponement and 35% said it should be canceled. Around 11,000 athletes from some 200 countries are expected to take part in the Games. But a decision on spectators is not expected before spring. The International Olympic Committee has said it will encourage all athletes to be vaccinated, and on Monday, the president of the French National Olympic Committee warned unvaccinated athletes would face extremely difficult conditions in Japan, including a 14-day quarantine. Vaccinations are not set to start in Japan until late February at the earliest, just 6 months before the huge international event is due to begin. Tokyo and other areas are under a state of emergency to tackle a record spike in COVID-19 cases. Meanwhile, also today, the governors of Tokyo and 3 neighboring prefectures are contemplating the future of the current state of emergency. The state of emergency in Tokyo and 10 other prefectures is set to expire February 7th. Tokyo reported another 868 infections on Friday. Daily cases have been going down, but health experts remain concerned. The governors want to consult with the central government on how a continued state of emergency would be enforced. If the declaration is extended, they say struggling businesses and people who have lost work will need more financial support. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much. Dennis, always hoping for the best. Stay safe, stay alert. Thank you for your time.
Stay safe, Alma. Reporting from Tokyo, Japan, this is Dennis Liu. We live in interesting times.
In other news, the Pfizer-BioNTech coronavirus jab has no link to reported post-vaccination deaths and no new side effects, the EU's medicine regulator said Friday, based on the first data from the vaccine's rollout. The European Medicines Agency said it had looked at the deaths, including a number in the elderly, and concluded that the data did not show a link to vaccination with Comirnaty, and the cases do not raise a safety concern. In its first safety update since the EU started its vaccination campaign in December, the Amsterdam-based EMA said that data is consistent with the known safety profile of the vaccine and no new side effects were identified. Reports of occasional severe allergic reactions did not go beyond what had already been found out about this known side effect, according according to the report. The EMA said the benefits of Comirnaty in preventing COVID-19 continue to outweigh any risks, and there are no recommended changes regarding the use of the vaccine. The EU watchdog has so far approved 2 vaccines by Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna. It is set to give its verdict on a third by AstraZeneca later Friday. Now, a number of countries, including Norway, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, and Sweden, have all reported deaths of people who had been given the Pfizer-BioNTech jab, but no direct links to the vaccine have been established. Norway, in particular, registered 33 deaths among elderly people who had received their first dose.
The South Carolina Department of Health and Environment Control announced the detection of 2 cases of the SARS-CoV-2 variant that was identified in South Africa. It is the first time that this more transmissible variant of the coronavirus is detected on U.S. soil. Let's listen in.
DHEC has announced today that the 2 cases associated with the COVID-19 virus variant that first emerged in South Africa have been detected in our state. There is no known travel history, and there is no known connection between the 2 cases. Both are adults. One is from the Low Country, and one of them is from the PD region. These are the first cases of the variant, which is labeled B.1.351 in the United States. The arrival of COVID-19, of any COVID-19 variant in South Carolina, including this one, is yet another
more severe disease than the more common strains of the virus, the higher infection rate associated with the variant would likely result in an increase in hospitalizations and deaths. Moderna and Pfizer have said lab studies show their COVID-19 vaccines remained effective against B.1.351, but the level of highly potent neutralizing antibodies, which bind to the spike protein of the virus to stop it from invading cells, was reduced in both cases.
Experts from the World Health Organization visited a Wuhan hospital today as the fieldwork began in a closely watched coronavirus origins probe that will take in a food market presumed to be ground zero of the pandemic. The WHO investigation team met Chinese officials Friday and then left their Wuhan hotel in a fleet of cars. The Xinhua Hospital, where some of the earliest COVID-19 patients were admitted, is among the field visits, which will include the Wuhan Institute of Virology, Wuhan Market, Wuhan CDC Laboratory, the WHO said in a tweet Thursday, 3 sites now indelibly linked with the pandemic. The Wuhan Market, which remains boarded up, is believed to have been the first major cluster of infections. The highly politicized mission had been beset by delays, with China refusing access until mid-January. China on Thursday warned the United States against political interference during a trip after the White House demanded a robust and clear investigation. The WHO insists the probe will be tethered tightly to the science behind how virus jumped to humans.
The travel plans of millions were thrown into disarray by canceled trains, flights, and Chinese government advice to stay at home ahead of the Lunar New Year, a sign of China's determination to keep the virus cases low at all costs. The capital, Beijing, is in the grip of a complex COVID-19 situation, according to city health authorities, warning this as the start of the 40-day peak travel period began for the Lunar New Year holiday. The festival for many Chinese people people the only opportunity to see relatives in the year, sees the world's biggest annual human movement as hundreds of millions crisscross the country. China hasn't issued a stay-at-home order but is instead making travel all but unfeasible and requesting cooperation from its vast population. Hundreds of flights in and out of Beijing had been canceled as of Thursday afternoon, according to flight tracker VeriFlight. Authorities have asked entertainment streaming services to offer free movies, TV, and sports services during the holiday to help people pass the time at home, while the three largest mobile operators, China Mobile, China Telecom, and China Unicom, will give 20 gigabytes of free data to users based in Beijing during the festival.
Now, here in the Philippines, the main building of the Department of Foreign Affairs will go on lockdown until Tuesday, February 2nd, after some officers tested positive for COVID-19. Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. said in a tweet he would go on quarantine after interacting with the officers he met the day before, but noted that he has tested negative. The Foreign Affairs chief said the main building would be on lockdown when we test again. A DFA statement said the temporary closure starting today, January 29, may be moved further depending on the results of the assessment. Meanwhile, the DFA said consular services to the public will remain open at the DFA consular office in Asiana in accordance with their publicized operating hours.
In other news, China on Friday said it will no longer recognize the British national overseas passport for Hong Kongers as Britain prepares to open its doors to millions more residents of the former colony following a security crackdown in Beijing. The Chinese move follows a promise by British Prime Minister Boris Johnson's government to provide long-term sanctuary for Hong Kong residents who want to leave the territory. Holders of British national overseas status, a legacy of UK rule over Hong Kong up to 1997, will from Sunday be able to apply to live and work in Britain for up to 5 years and eventually seek citizenship. BNO passport holders previously had only limited rights to visit the UK for up to 6 months and no right to work or settle. London said it is acting in response to a national security law imposed by China last year, which has devastated Hong Kong's democracy movement and shredded freedoms meant to last 50 years under the 1997 Handover Accord. Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian said an indignant China believed Britain had marched well beyond the scope of the agreement, therefore nullifying it. How many Hong Kongers will take up the offer remains to be seen, especially as the coronavirus pandemic restricts global flights and mires much of the world, including Britain, in a painful economic melee. But a BNO passport is available to a huge number of people, about 70% of Hong Kong's total population of 7.5 million. Applications for BNO passports have skyrocketed more than 300% since the national security law was imposed last July, with 733,000 registered holders as of mid-January. All right, Vietnam is conducting COVID-19 tests at the Communist Party Congress. Joining us live is Eliana Faith Sebastian. Hello, Eliana.
Hello, Alma. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, that's right. Vietnam conducts COVID-19 tests for hundreds of members of security, support staff, and journalists at the National Convention Center, the venue for the Communist Party Congress. The country recorded more than 18 new COVID-19 community-transmitted cases for the first time in almost 2 months on Thursday. The infections were detected in northern Vietnam, where one cluster has been linked to a case of the more contagious coronavirus variant first spotted in Britain. The figure was a new daily record for the communist nation of 96 million people, which has been widely praised for its handling of the pandemic, recording just over 1,500 cases before the new cluster and only 35 deaths. In Haiduang province, the cases are thought to be linked to a factory worker who tested positive for the virus when she landed in the Japanese city of Osaka. She was found to have the British variant. The city where the factory is located has been closed off, and 220,000 people are in lockdown, while medical workers are rushing to test tens of thousands of people in the area. In Guangnan, on the border with China, one of those infected is a security official at Bandung Airport, where international passengers have been arriving before being sent into mandatory quarantine. The airport has been shut while passenger vehicles are banned from leaving or entering the province. The outbreak comes at a sensitive time for Vietnam, with its twice-in-a-decade Communist Party Congress beginning on Tuesday to select new leadership. A long Lunar New Year break will follow in February, when millions of people are expected to travel to see their families. Back to you, Alma.
All right, thank you very much, Eliana, for your update and for your time. I know you're busy. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Alma, reporting live from Da Nang, Vietnam. This is Eliana Faith Sebastian. We live in interesting times.
In Paris, striking national education staff take part in a
superstorm that made landfall in Mozambique last week. It caused heavy flooding across swathes of southern Africa. Tropical cyclone Eloise hit central Mozambique on Saturday, packing winds of up to 150 kilometers per hour, plus torrential rains. It slammed into the province of Sofala, an area still reeling from two deadly cyclones in 2019, before weakening into an overland depression, moving inland towards Zimbabwe, Botswana, and northern South Africa. The UN's Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, or OCHA, said at least 21 people are now known to have died, including 11 in Mozambique, 4 in Eswatini, 3 in Zimbabwe, and 2 in South Africa. One person was also killed when the storm passed over the Indian Ocean island nation of Madagascar before making landfall. More than 270,000 people have been affected by the storm, the vast majority in Mozambique, where over 20,000 people have been displaced, 20,500 houses damaged or destroyed.
In other news, clashes erupted Friday between hundreds of opponents and supporters of a major farmers' protest that has disrupted the Indian capital for more than 8 weeks. Tensions have been building around the farmers' camp since Republic Day on Tuesday, when a tractor rally turned into a citywide rampage, which left one farmer dead and nearly 400 police injured. Farmers are opposing reforms which aim to deregulate farm produce markets that have for decades been organized by state bodies with minimum prices guaranteed. Those protesting say the changes will let Indian conglomerates take over the farming industry. Farming provides jobs for 2/3 of India's 1.3 billion population, but the government says the industry is inefficient and the reforms will boost rural incomes.
Eagle News will be right back. Stay tuned.
This portion is brought to you by Canriv Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Services offered: supply and installation of elevators, escalators.